Here we go. I don't know why it always amuses me so much to watch the lag happen. Perhaps it's something about shamans operating outside of linear time, maybe. Um, so, wow. Wow, wow. I feel like I start every one of these episodes with a big wow and a big oh my gosh, I can't believe everything that's happened so far. And yet it's always, always true. I'm going to move this microphone just a little bit closer this way. So, let's see. Okay, so I promised folks on a preview of this that I would talk about what I did to get to this point where there's a lot of things happening, and I'm going to talk about, how those all played out. But it's a pretty massive and major shift that seems, from the outside, it seems like it's happening really, 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 really fast. And there are many parts of it that are happening really, really fast. Earlier today, in my house, I conducted a ceremony for the house and for all beings who either have benefited from shelter in this place or who will benefit from shelter in this place. That whoever comes to our I will just call it an open house. It's like some launch thing that this particular realtor does. But all of the potential buyers who are going to come see the house tomorrow, that the ones who most feel the value of the way this house has supported us, has nurtured us, has given us shelter, safety, stability, and love, and that they will see that and sense that and feel that and know that when they come see this house tomorrow. And they will assign such great value to that they will offer generously, valuing that which they sense in monetary value. And as I was doing that ceremony, this Sheryl Crow song came to me. And so, as I always do, because my ancestors always remind me, don't forget to sing. So I basically hummed the song in my ceremony because I couldn't remember all the lyrics. It wasn't one of her more famous ones. But I'm going to sing it for you. And, looking at the lyrics, I'm not even necessarily sure why this particular song called to me today to be sung. And yet, it's not always about me. In fact, it rarely is. Sometimes Spirit asks me to sing a song that someone else needs to hear. In fact, that's usually how it works. So whoever needs to hear this song, this is for you. I spent a year in the mouth of a whale with a flame and a book of signs. You'll never know how hard I failed trying to make up for lost time. Once I believed in things unseen. I was blinded by the dark. Out of the multitude to me, he came and broke my heart. When the dust in the field has flown, and the youngest of hearts has grown, and you doubt you will ever be free. Don't bail on me. River is wide and oh so deep, and it winds and winds around. I dream we're happy in my sleep, floating down and down and down. And the tide rushes by where we stand, and the earth underneath turns to sand, and we're waiting for someone to see. Honey, don't bail on me. Tell my ma I loved the man, even though I turned and ran. Lovely and fine I could have been, laying down in the palm of his hand, laying down in the palm of his hand, laying down in the palm of his hand. In the morning you wait for the sun, and secretly hope it won't come. But time washes everyone clean. Baby, now don't bail on me. Don't bail on me. Don't bail on me. So, yeah, that song just sort of spontaneously popped into my head earlier today while I was conducting that ceremony. And so I had several people have kind of asked me, like, what in the world, how did this even come to pass? Because I hadn't really, I mean, I've been wanting to do this for a very long time, but I hadn't really told anyone how imminently we were planning on making this happen. So, let's see the best way. Let's start in October of 2020, when I was in the middle of a medical leave of absence for anxiety, depression, fibromyalgia, and rheumatoid arthritis, and I had begun conducting, a very critical look at myself through the autoethnographic methods that I learned in grad school. And at a certain point, I'm not sure what prompted it, but I got a little bit of, I always get a travel bug. I love traveling. Traveling is one of my joys in life. And so I got a little weird travel bug. And I got curious about what would it take to purchase a castle in Europe? Because I had heard through several, people and some curious articles on the internet that I was like, what is this? What's going on here? That there were instances, and I don't know if they're still happening. They might still be happening, but there were instances. I looked them up. I did a bit of cross-referencing from different sources. There were some cities in Italy and possibly other countries in Europe that were basically selling these, historic, kind of mini castles or, just historic buildings that were at threat of, just being dilapidated and needing to be restored. And so they were inviting people to purchase it for €1. And then you could go buy this, kind of dilapidated but really beautiful old historic building, and then you had to promise to invest a certain amount of money per year into the restoration of that building, and then you could just live there. So that got me really curious. And then I just started wondering, like, how does one do that? How does one take, a relatively small amount of money that I might have had on hand and turn it into something that is a place you can be and live and grow in? So, so apparently castles in Europe are not that expensive. By the way, I think, I haven't looked recently, but at the time, there were many, 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 many very decent options that had already either been completely renovated or at least partially renovated and restored for like 500,000 euros or $500,000, or somewhere in that range. And there were many, many options lower too, and many, many options higher. So it was kind of interesting that there were just so many options for, and many of them already had established like vacation rental businesses attached to them. So it would have been super easy to walk in if one had that kind of money, which, we didn't have. To be able to just walk in, purchase a business that is already, ongoing and has profitability. I think what happened is a lot of people lost a lot of money during COVID who had vacation rentals. And so there were suddenly a lot on the market. That's my speculation. I have no idea. I'm not actually trained to say that, but that's my hunch. And then, so then I realized, just hypothetically at the time, we could have sold the house that we're living in right now, that is on the market officially, and we could have probably had about $100,000 in equity in our hands. I thought, well, $100,000 is not enough to buy a $500,000 castle in Europe, but it is a sizable chunk of change that could be invested in an interesting way. Well, of course, it's not my house alone. I own this house with my partner, Mike. And so whatever decision I make about what to do with the money that's left over after the sale is not mine alone to make. It's ours to make. And $100,000 is not enough wasn't enough to do what we wanted to do. But then I started thinking, well, what about Brazil? Because I hadn't actually legitimately looked at Brazil as an option since Bolsonaro was elected, because I just was having I don't want to have anything to do with that country while he's president. And yet, of course, the people that I love are still always there, and the communities that I go to and love are still there, regardless of who the president is. And so I started looking around at what it might be to purchase a piece of property in Brazil. And conditions are really quite favorable at the moment. Now, granted, probably the house we're selling this weekend or next week or whenever it all happens, we may not be able to purchase an entire built house in Brazil, but very, very, very likely we will be able to buy at least a piece of property upon which we can build. So that's what we're doing right now, Mike and I. We are selling this house that we live in right now because the market has increased to such a degree that we are in a position to probably, without even stretching it really too far, to walk away with $200K instead of $100K. So the value of our house has increased that much, which for me, once I realized that in probably, I think I started paying attention again late November of 2021, early December of 2021. Because I had occasionally looked at, we sort of like to Zillow stalk our neighborhood and just see, I wonder who's selling. I wonder what they're selling for. I wonder what the house looks like. I wonder if it looks better than ours or worse than ours. And, just to see how is our house doing as an investment of money. And I just started seeing the prices go way up. And then simultaneously, so the other thing that was going on is when I resigned from my position at the university in June, because of the way my contract worked at the university, and I had opted in to be paid all during 12 months instead of only during 9 months, I resigned in June, but I was still receiving my paychecks to the end of my contract, which was, mid-August or whatever. So that was my first safety net. And I assumed, perhaps, foolishly or even erroneously, that the business I was starting would already be profitable enough by September 1st that I would just flow right into being a small business owner. I'm sure those of you who have small businesses are just laughing your heads off right now, like, oh yeah, did you think it was going to happen so quick? Ha 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 ha, like magic, right? Well, there are many things happening here that do feel like magic, but one has to learn one's lessons along the way, doesn't one? So, sorry, I'm going to actually go back to the YouTube screen just in case anybody's commenting. Good, when it is. Okay, so that was first safety net that ended right around the end of the summer, beginning of September. So then, I still had a couple of months of like, oh, okay, I kind of had, I had things paid for. I kind of prepaid, my half of the household mortgage and bills through to December. And I, kind of gave myself a bit of a cushion. And then I kind of went through and still, it was a very interesting and very weird and very real mental block for me, this whole thing of not being able to get the business up and running. And was investing a lot of money in business coaching and, marketing support and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what is the deal? Why are things still not driving? And at that point, and I had already done work in, if you know the medicine wheel, and if you've heard me talk about the medicine wheel, we start the medicine wheel in the South. And so I had done work in the South of the medicine wheel on releasing the scarcity mindset that I believed was something I had inherited. And so started that set of work, did some initial work on that. The issue, because by 3 or 4 months in, it still didn't seem to be resolving itself, did some additional work in the North on what I assumed was perhaps some sort of genetic or, historical or past life kind of blockage. And worked on it again in that regard. And still things were, then it came time to look to another safety net. This was about October, I think. And I was also looking in to see what support could sort of fast track the business model to profitability. And so I cashed in my 401k. I invested about half of it in, this launch program, and half of it just to support myself during these next couple of months, 2 or 3 months. And I was like, okay, I feel like I'm investing in myself, which seems like the right thing to do. And then I was just sort of, trusting. Still things were slow to move. Then, as we move along in the medicine wheel and we get to, I believe it was in the East that we did the Huaca ceremony. And if you were watching any of my live streams at the time, I think this would have been November maybe. The Huaca ceremony was a very, very, very powerful ceremony for initiating a radical shift. And my intention going into that was that I needed a radical shift with whatever was blocking my ability to live an abundant life. Like, I didn't know what was blocking me for that. And that ceremony was incredibly powerful. And even still, it took one more destiny retrieval with one of my very dear friends, one of my classmates from shaman training, that the final thing clicked. The final thing clicked that made me know absolutely, unequivocally, without a doubt, what path I'm on. And that there was no more reason to wonder or fear or worry, that I just was so certain of it that I didn't have to question it anymore. Now, in the meantime, because 1 year ago I already wanted to start the dream of having one property in the United States and one property in Brazil, being able to go freely back and forth between them, and starting a business in the healing arts to develop an arts-centered healing retreat in Brazil. That has been the dream for over 10 years. And so now we're going to have a house that's completely paid for in Erie. We're establishing our base in Brazil, and I'll be running an Airbnb, but I will also be continuing my shaman business and my energy medicine practitioner business. And I don't have to be desperate for clients anymore because my life will be paid for. And so whoever needs to come to me will come to me, and I will very gladly, graciously do whatever I can to help them on their journey. And it just feels really liberating to be in that space right now. It feels, I was telling someone the other day, that my project right now is that I'm getting myself free. Free from the constraints of the workaholic life that I had been living for so long, free of the constraints of a geocentric focus of where one has to be in the world, that I can be in multiple places regularly all the time, and that there's nothing wrong with that, and it's a beautiful thing. But all this time, it took a while to convince Mike, because every time I would say, "Hey, babe, I saw some pictures of a property for sale in Brazil," he literally had to tell me, he's like, "Every time you bring that up, I get really, really nervous." And so I thought I was presenting things in an exciting, fun way, and it was just making him nervous. Well, the thing is, when my final safety net ran out, and I knew it was happening before Christmas, and I didn't want that to spoil our Christmas. And so I waited until after Christmas to bring up the stark reality that I could no longer afford to contribute my half of the responsibilities of this house. And we knew that he wasn't making enough money to assume 100% of the financial responsibilities of this house. And it seemed, in regard to that circumstance and looking at the market right now, that it would be foolish to lose the house rather than capitalize on what it is offering us at this moment and this particular point in time. It feels like a divine gift, and it feels like I would be ungrateful to not accept this divine gift, because this is what I've been asking the universe for, and the universe is like, here you go. Here's this particular real estate market, which is going to get you to the next stage of your dreams. And I'm actually kind of glad that we didn't end up going with one of those investment buyers like Open Door or the other ones, because now I know that whoever buys this house is buying it for themselves, and they're buying it because they have walked through these walls and sensed the value of this place. It's not the fanciest house in the world. It's not even the most recently renovated house, but it has been a really good house for us. So the week between Christmas and New Year, Mike and I had a kind of several day long, very difficult conversation about what our most likely possible reality was. And we had been talking about ideas theoretically for a long time. So we already knew that it was probably going to be a lot cheaper to have a house in his hometown of Erie, Pennsylvania, than it would be to have one, in any other place we might want to live, like near a coast, for example. I guess Lake Erie counts as a coast, right? So we had already known that was a plausible option. We had tossed around the idea of just like selling everything and going to Portugal, just to lay low while the world implodes. Because it seems like Portugal, nobody ever bothers Portugal, and Portugal never bothers anyone. So it seemed like a really safe plan to go to Portugal. And so we had known that there were hypothetically these possibilities, but we just didn't know how quickly we were going to need to move, and how rather urgent it was that we take this kind of action now rather than get into a position of, defaulting on the house and losing the house. That would have been the stupidest way to go about it. So here we are. So since January 1st, We started looking at houses in Erie, found one that we liked that met pretty much most of our requirements, put in an offer. The offer was accepted. We are now pending sale. It is contingent both on our successful sale of this house and their successful purchase of the house they're getting, which we all felt was in good faith interest for everyone. So that seems to be, cross your fingers and knock on whatever IKEA makes their things out of, just to hope that that is all smooth. And that is the one thing that Mike specifically requested, is that this be a smooth process. So we are all in support of no messy bumps along the way. If some little bumps here and there are fine, we can deal with that, but we don't want any major disruptions, because it's already been a major disruption. So we offered and got accepted a house in Erie that we will be able to pay for cash. I secured a lease on a 3-bedroom, 3-bath house in Itacaré in Brazil for 1 year, a lease for 1 year, which I have permission to rent the other 2 bedrooms out on Airbnb. So that is how our life will basically support itself. That happened already. And now we have pre-packed, purged a bunch of stuff, cleaned a bunch of stuff, staged a bunch of stuff, listed the house. It is having its open house launch tomorrow. The realtor expects to have several offers on the table by Monday morning. And I have booked my plane ticket from Erie to Brazil for March 29th. So that's how it happened. And it's not done yet. We're not there's still several T's that have to be crossed and several I's that have to be dotted. But it feels like everything's happening at exactly the right time, in exactly the right way, in exactly the right order. So on that note, I am going to bid you all a beautiful weekend. It's a special weekend for me because my son is having a birthday. So he's coming over for a homemade, mother-made dinner on Sunday, and that makes me very happy. So, good weekend to you all. See you next time on Fortissimo, Fridays at 5 with Flavor. Bye.